Hello, geographers. We are going to learn about some important geographers from the past. Aristotle was a Greek philosopher who was the first person to demonstrate that the earth was spherical. Go ahead and write down the name Aristotle and draw a circle around it to help you remember that. Eratosthenes was also a Greek philosopher, but he worked mostly on math and geography. He measured the circumference of the earth with geometry and coined the word geography. Here's the map made by Eratosthenes. It is a weird looking map, but it does have some things in common with today's map. First of all, I want you to see Europe is right up here. We have Libya right here, which is a country on the continent of Africa, and one of the only countries that Europeans would have known about. And then over here we have Asia. This says Asia. Now, Eratosthenes was from Greece. So Greece is right here, part of the European continent. And so he would be aware of what is mostly right around the Greek area, and everything else he was guesstimating about. Ptolemy was from the Roman Empire, and he wrote a book called Geography and described the forerunner to longitude and latitude lines. Those lines are important because they help sailors navigate the seas, which is going to be very important for map making. Here is Ptolemy's map. You can see on the sides right here and right here the latitude markings. And you can also see this looks a little more like today's Europe. This looks a little more like today's Middle East. So it's a little more accurate. We're getting a little closer to what the reality of the world actually looked like. We're jumping way ahead with an Arabic geographer named Al-Idrisi. He's in the 12th century. He worked for the king of Sicily. Sicily is a city in Italy, but Saudi Arabia or Arabia would be farther south. And he drew his map from the perspective of south being on the top and north being on the bottom. So when we look at his map on the next side, it's going to be completely flipped. So it may look like his map's not an improvement because it's not what we're used to seeing. We're used to seeing north on the top and south on the bottom, although there's no requirement for that in a map. Al-Idrisi's map is strange for me, but I'm going to point out some things for you to help you gain perspective with this map. So right over here we have Spain, and right over here we have what is today's Saudi Arabia, and then this in the middle here, this sea is the Mediterranean Sea. This right here is Greece. It's to help give you some perspective of where things are, but as you can see, south is on the top and north is on the bottom. Abraham Ortelius was in the 16th century, so we are advancing past the medieval period, and he designed the first modern atlas called the Theater of the World. Here is a page in Abraham Ortelius's atlas. This is a picture of the world. As you can see, it looks a lot more like what our world maps look like today. What has happened in the 16th century that we didn't have in the other maps? Well, we have a lot of exploration that has happened that we did not have before. How did the maps change between Eratosthenes and Ortelius? Well, if you think back to Eratosthenes, we had Europe, we had Asia, which was kind of a big blob, and then there was Libya. The entire African continent was Libya. So that was the entire Eratosthenes map. And then Ortelius, his map, it looks a lot like our world maps today. So there's some big changes. Why? Why do we have such big changes? So in the 3rd century with Eratosthenes, basically the sailors had sailed the Mediterranean Sea and that's about it. But if you go up to Ortelius in the 16th century, well, we had discovered the New World by then. We discovered North and South America. There's a lot more awareness of what is out there because the sailors were able to navigate. We have longitude and latitude. They're using that longitude and latitude system to help them navigate. Now we're arriving at the birth of modern geography with Alexander von Humboldt in the late 18th century. He's a German who studied South America, and he saw the world as connected and saw that different parts of the world could benefit each other. And why is this so different? Why is this departure? Well, we had leaders sending sailors out to conquer the world. We had leaders sending sailors out to look for resources. We didn't look at these new places as a place that could provide us any other benefit beyond um, financial or glory. That's mainly what we saw in these places. But Alexander von Humboldt saw that we could share culture and that we could benefit each other by sharing each other's culture. It's funny that today we still have people denying that humans have an effect on the environment because George Perkins Marsh identified this way back in the 1800s. He first described how natural systems are impacted by human actions. He's considered the first modern environmentalist. Obviously, we know that a lot of impact is negative. We don't set out necessarily to make negative things happen, but by changing the earth, often it does negatively affect the environment. Carl Sauer is going to enact major change in how geography is studied. He argued that culture affects landscape, that the interactions between people and their environment should be the of geography rather than focusing on mountains and why they're there and where are they. But, what do people do? Because of those mountains, and how do those mountains affect people, and how do people get around those mountains? So that's just an example of the type of thing that Carl Sauer really wanted to consider. So if you notice, the name on our textbook is called Cultural Landscapes, and that is after Carl Sauer.